mode. And we'll close that. All right, so today this is like one of the really great and exciting things today. We're going to see how to control Chrome from VBA. It turns out that we can control Internet Explorer from VBA natively. It's just like VBA is like ready to start up and start controlling Internet Explorer, which was great when Internet Explorer was a popular browser. But now most of the sites that you want to interact with are going to be like, hey, you're using Internet Explorer here. No. And so we've got to go to a different way. And there is no other browser that VBA can control natively. And so what we have to do to be able to get this to work is we have to install some software. So that's going to be the first thing that we're going to do today. And so the notes that the link to the instructions for installing are right here down in the links for today's lecture on the blog. And that will bring up these instructions here. So let me mute my phone. So we are installing a project called, we'll be using a project called Selenium. Selenium is an open source project that allows us to automate any browser, really. So we're going to use Chrome, but we could use Firefox, we could use Edge, you can even do Internet Explorer. I'm not sure why you would. Safari, it'll automate all of these. And it is agnostic in terms of its of the language that you're using. And so if you're learning Python, you'll still, a lot of the stuff we're learning today will transfer over to Python because it's the same Selenium object browser that will let you do a Selenium project that will let you automate Chrome from Python as well. And so what we have to install is a project called Selenium Basic. So Selenium Basic is just a wrapper around the Selenium project that allows us to interact with it from VBA. And so we're going to follow this link here. And this will take us to the Selenium Basic project on GitHub. Now GitHub is actually, it's a code sharing site that is actually now owned by Microsoft. So GitHub is it's just a place that lots of people will share examples that they're doing. It's actually, when you download, if you ever download a file from the blog, this is where I host the files that we do in class. So it's just it's a reputable place, although they're not doing anything to make sure that anything you download from GitHub is not malicious. So the community just maintains that. Selenium Basic is a fine thing to download. So we're going to come and download the Selenium Basic executable. And this is only going to work for us here in Windows. So if you're on Mac, you're just watching today. Truth is, we can control Safari from Mac VBA, from VBA on Mac, more natively than we can control Chrome on Windows. So it's possible to do, and it's actually kind of built in, but we're not covering it today. Okay, so when you go through the installation process here, so go ahead and run that to install it. Let me come back to notes on Selenium. I've already got it installed on this computer, so I'm not going to run it again. But that will bring up, you'll kind of go through and accept the defaults up until the last screen where you have the install button. You're going to want to copy the location where it's installing. So let's just go ahead and get to that point, hit install, and copy this before you hit install. Probably a good idea to like open up Notepad or something and paste it somewhere that you won't lose it off your clipboard. Because we're going to need to update part of this that actually gets installed. So yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. And I'm going to pause the recording and come around and help. Okay, so once we've got that downloaded, we're going to download the Chrome web driver. So we'll follow the link that's here. And the page is updated a little bit, but we're still looking for the latest stable release. So I'll go ahead and follow that link so you can see what it looks like. I think I'm going to. Is that link working for you? Not quite sure what's wrong here.
So once we get in there, I assume we download the Windows one?
Yeah, you're going to download the Windows 32-bit. Yeah, there's only one that talks about Windows. Looks better. Okay, so we're looking for all versions available. Oh, here it is. Latest stable release, Chrome driver 96. And then we're downloading this one here, this one that says Win32zip. So that's the one that we're after. So then that's got one file in it here, Chrome driver.exe. That's an updated version of the Chrome driver. So every time Chrome updates itself, the guys that are managing this project make a new version of the Chrome driver here. And so what we've downloaded from Selenium Basic needs to get the most recent copy of the Chrome driver put into it. And so that's what that path was for. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new browser window and paste that path in. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and type it in. It's local and then Selenium Basic. Okay, so what you'll see is that there's a Chrome driver.exe file in what we downloaded, and you just have to drag over the updated Chrome driver.exe and just drop it in and tell it to replace the one that's there. So now your Selenium Basic will have access to the most recent Chrome driver. Looks like I've got a couple of chats here. How did you get the link to work? I got the link to work by refreshing the page. And not sure why it was broken, but I refreshed the page and then it worked for me. Yes.
When you move Chrome driver, where do you go?
So I'm just going to kind of drop it right on the same folder that has the Chrome driver.exe already. And if you just drop it right on top of that, I'm not sure if you should drop on top of the file because it might try to launch it with that, but just drag it and kind of drop it into the white space in that folder. And then one more thing, and then we'll pause the recording and come help individually. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to the scripts folder over here in my Selenium Basic folder that we opened up. I'm going to go to the scripts folder, and there's one called startchrome.vbs. I'm just going to double click that, and it should bring up Chrome and just, give me a button that says click OK to quit. If it actually brings up Chrome, you are in good shape. If it gives you an error, it might say install .NET framework. Go ahead and Okay, so now I should have Selenium installed on this computer and Selenium Basic installed, which is what we need. So I'm going to come back to my blog for the class. And the files that we're going to download at the top, I'm going to go ahead and download these two files. So trucklist.xlsx and parser.cls. So our trucklist.xlsx is just the data that we're going to be working with today. So I'll get that open, and we'll deal with parser.cls here in just a bit. So I'm opening up trucklist.xlsx. Now it's an XLSX file, so there's no VBA in it. So as soon as I open it, I want to make sure that I'll be able to save my VBA that I'm writing here. So I'm going to go ahead and save it with a new name, or just save it as a .xlsm file. We're about to write some code to go into it. So this will be XLSM. I'll call this truck list fall 21. Okay, so this data that we have here is a list of carriers. I'm not sure what list of carriers this is, but these are all common carriers. So these are people that are registered with the federal government to move freight from one place to another. They are doing their annual safety inspections and making sure that you've got whatever training you have to do to be allowed to work on the interstate highways. And so the idea here is that we've got this information from somewhere, and we need to be able to get the telephone numbers for this particular set of trucking companies. Well, good news, we've got a URL that's going to provide that information for us. So let me just go ahead and open up that URL. And so we can see what it is. So here we have, so this is some .gov, Department of Transportation, .gov, that's pretty good. It's a Department of Transportation website, and if we have the number of the US Department of Transportation number for one of these trucks, we should be able to come and fill in the US dot number and hit search. And since, I wonder what I did wrong. Maybe there was a space. It does say it's the Department of Transportation number, which is a different one. Choose the first one. I know the first one's there because I practiced with it earlier today. Search. There we go. So now we have the Duke brothers. And it could be that this data is a little bit old and those registration numbers are no longer active. So we might have some of these that aren't active. So the process will be to fill out that form, click on that link, and then it should bring us up the data that we're after, where we've got the telephone number and the fax number. Who has a fax machine anymore? I don't know. Apparently these guys do. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. Now realize that this is so what we're doing here is really a general process. So if you're working with a website that you need to log into to be able to get at the data that you want, it's the same thing, right? We're coming to a form here, plugging in some information, might be a username and a password to log in, and then clicking on the search button or the login button. But it's the same activities that we're learning how to do on this website that you can do with any site that you have to log in. Okay, so let's see how to do it. And actually, I'm just going to open up my notes from the last time I taught this. Where is F11? So this is the direction that we're headed today. Okay, so first thing is we're using objects now that are not native to Excel. And so we're gonna have to put a reference to the object library that describes those objects. And so that's gonna be the Selenium basic type library. So let's go ahead and insert a module. And then I'm going to add the reference. So I'll choose tools, references, and then I'm going to find the Selenium type library. Make sure I've got a check in the box and say, okay, so now it knows about this particular object. So we can create an instance of this object to be able to get going. So let's go ahead and make a sub procedure. In fact, let's do this. I'm gonna make a sub procedure called get, let's call it get one. And I'm going to take into it the US dot number. So I'll just call it Department of Transportation num as a string. We'll go back to see those references here in just a second. Closing parenthesis. Okay, to add the references, now that I've got my project open, I'm going to choose Tools, References. And then I'll scroll down to find Selenium type library. So it's down with the, until you check it, it'll be down with the other S's. Okay, so I'm going to declare now an object that will let me manipulate all this stuff with Selenium. I'm going to call it bot. So I'll dim bot as a web driver. Then we're going to set bot equal to a new web driver. So that's going to give me my object. So the dim just gives me a variable that'll allow me to keep track of where that object is in memory. And then when we create the new web driver and set bot equal to it, we now have actually instantiated that object. So we've got that thing loaded into memory. We can call its properties, refer to its properties, we can call its methods, which is what we're going to do now. We're going to call the start method. So bot.start, and then I will pass it a string argument of Chrome. I'm going to go ahead and put a stop here, a breakpoint here, and that should now allow me to run this, and it will open up Chrome, the Chrome that I'm able to control from VBA. Whoops, I'm going to have to make one to run this and actually pass it a number. So another sub, I'll just call this, why don't I call this get all. Here's the one that we would write a loop to go through down that column and control it. We're not going to do that in class today. That's something that you could do, but what we're going to have it do is we're going to have it call this one, and we'll pass it then one of these numbers. I'll just go ahead and choose the first one. In fact, maybe what we'll do, yeah, I think what we should do is instead of passing it the number, let's pass it, instead of passing it the US dot number, because we're going to need to know which row to write this data back to. So we're going to pass it a row number. So we'll pass it row 2. Instead of a dot number, this is going to be row as along. It would work to get the data the way I had it configured, but to write it back to the sheet, we have to know which row to write it to. Okay, we're not doing anything with that yet, but that should allow us to call it at this point. So I'll go ahead and run get all. And we can see that it's brought up Chrome, and it says here, Chrome is being controlled by automated test software. Probably the main thing that Selenium is used for is actually writing scripts like to test your website. So you can kind of go from page to page and kind of test all the path-throughs, make sure all the links work and so forth. And so when Chrome opens, and Chrome has extended itself, it has made its functionality available to do this kind of thing. It's telling the user here, just be sure that you understand that there is someone else who's controlling Chrome right now. So kind of be aware of what's going on. So that's what that message is there for. But now we should be able to open to a particular page. And so that's going to be the get method. So after I open it, I'm going to call bot.get. And I'm going to take it to that search page that we saw where we have the data. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of leave myself in break mode while I'm writing this. So I'll just drag it back up to bot.get, run that, and it should open that page. Now, I want you to notice what happens. Let me go ahead and go back here. And notice what happens when I run that. The question is it going to get to the stop first, or is the page going to load first? So I'm going to go ahead and run this and just watch and tell me which one happens. They happened at about the same time. So the truth is, as soon as we tell it to get that page, VBA is moving on. It's not going to wait until the page gets there. We need to get it to wait until the page gets there, because our next step is going to be on that page. So if we try to refer to something that's on that page before the page is here, it'll just be an error. Question in the back? So right here, okay, let me go ahead and pause the recording and let's go help. Okay. So the next thing we have to do is we have to be able to find, we're trying to put in a particular US Department of Transportation number right here. So we've got to find this control on the web page. So we have to understand something about the underlying HTML that generates this page. So I'm going to right click this and I'm going to choose inspect. This is going to open the object inspector. And I think by default, it's going to be a docked pane. It's okay to leave this as a docked pane, but I need a little more room to work with it here. So I'm going to choose the three little dots. And I'm going to tell it to dock in a separate window. So I'm going to choose this dock, and I'll just pop that window out. Now, the first time I launch this, it sometimes doesn't take me right to the page that this element was created. So now that this inspector is open, I'm going to do that same process again. I'm going to right click this input box, and I'm going to click inspect. And that will take me, I'm going to zoom in a bit here. That will take me right to the HTML that is currently rendered to show that particular object. So this is going to give me what I need to know to be able to track this particular tag down on this sheet and get a reference to it so I can manipulate it. Yes. Yeah, so to get this line of code, I'll just go ahead and do it again. So I'm looking for, this is what I want to put in. I want to put in the US Department of Transportation number into this input box. So I'm going to right click that and choose inspect. First time it opens, might not bring it up. See, it actually just is inspecting the whole body here. And so I'm just going to move this out of the way so I can get back here and choose inspect again. And then once that's already open, it should take me directly to where that one is defined. So this is the HTML right here that is making that input box. Now, there are several different ways that I can go about attaching onto a particular element of an HTML page here. If I have a name, which is really common when you're trying to fill in a text box, they don't always have names, they usually have names. If they have a name, that's going to be my kind of one of the really easy ways to attach onto it. And so I'm now just going to tell my bot to hook up to this particular web element. And so to do that, I come back to VBA, and I'm actually going to declare another variable here. I'm going to call it elem as a web element. The web element is something that's defined as a part of Selenium Basic, so it's an object that knows how to work with little parts of a page. And then let's see. It is a little bit different than I had in the example here. I'm going to set elem equal to, and then I'm going to call the method find element by name. And I'm going to give it the name. So the name here is DOT. And if I go back and look at this page, the name here is DOT. So this tag input starts here and ends here, has a name of dot. And so I've declared a web element, an object of type web element, and I'm now going to find, I'm going to get an element off that page by name dot. So if I run that, I should say set. Then I should have a reference to that web element. Once I've got a reference to that web element, then it's got an object that has properties as well. So there's a tag name property. Every element has a tag name. It has to have a tag name because it's the HTML tag that actually makes the element. And so just to kind of show that it's an object that I can refer to properties of, I can now ask back what the tag name is of that element that I found by name. Found it by its name here, and you'll see the tag name is input. So it's actually getting me back to this particular, the object in Chrome that's rendering that little text box. So now I should be able to send some keys, like send some keystrokes to that object. So now I'm going to say elem dot send keys. And then this is just going to take a string that I can send to it. What keystrokes do I want to have the user type in? And so I'm going to send to it whichever, I'm going to send to it what's in this cell right here. So I've passed in the row, the column is E. I'm just going to assume that we're on that particular sheet. So we'll have the default sheet. So cells, row number, row, column number, E, and I want to send the value to it. Okay, so this part to me is always magical the first time I see it happen. I'm going to run this line of statement over here in VBA, and it should put that Department of Transportation identifier right there onto the web page. So I'll run that, and it has now put that into Chrome right here. Yeah, does anyone else agree that it feels magical the first time you see that happen? Yeah. Okay, so next thing that actually, I've kind of forgot a step here. We've got to tell, so after we say bot.get here, we've got to make sure it waits until the page is loaded. So I'm going to put a loop in here, do and loop. And I am going to do until, and there's a couple of ways that I can do this. Until. So I can kind of look and see what's on the page and say, I'm going to just kind of keep looping here and waiting until something that I'm expecting to be on that page shows up. Or I can loop until something in the URL has changed. So if I look here, I'm expecting this to say like search.asp. Is it ASP? Oh, wow, it's ASP. ASP is pretty old technology. It's late 90s technology. So I am going to, oh, you know what? I think the get, I don't think the get has to wait. It's the next one that we have to wait for. So let's move this. I'm going to get rid of that. So let's go ahead and now find the next object, and we'll have to wait after we click on this search button. That's right. When we say get, I think the Selenium basic knows to wait until the page is there. But it doesn't really know that a page is loading when I just send a click, which is what we're going to do to click on this button. So we'll have to wait for that. So I'm going to right click and inspect my search button and see how I might be able to get to it. And it has a name property as well. And so that's going to make it pretty easy for me to refer to that. I can refer to it just like refer. So it's called submit. I think this one I'm just going to refer to it directly. So I'm going to find that object and it's submit. And make sure it might be case sensitive. It is an uppercase S and the rest is lowercase. And then I'm just going to call the click method. So I'm just going to say .click. So now I'm going to go run that line. And we can see that it has clicked that button and taken me to the results. But here is where, so even though the bot knows to pause when I call get, it does not know that it should be waiting for the page to load when I send that click. And so here is where I'm going to do a do until. And we're going to look at the URL, just copy this over. So I'm looking at the URL of the bot, and I'm just going to keep waiting in this loop until the URL includes search results. So I'm calling in string, looking at the beginning of the string, looking at the URL of the bot, and I want to wait until it finds search results. So I've got a do set up here. Put a loop in. And then here, we're just going to call application.wait. Now, the argument that you pass for application.wait is you're going to wait until some future time shows up on the system clock. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to wait for 1 second. So I'm going to call the date add function. I'm going to tell it that I want to add 1 second. And so the way I tell it to add a second is S, and I tell it 1 second onto the current time. And that should give me a date that's 1 second in the future. So this loop is going to check to see if it's already there. If it's not, if it doesn't see search results in the URL, it's going to pause for 1 second. That's what this will do. And then it'll loop back up to the top and check again. Does the URL say search results in it? If it does, it'll let it out. If it doesn't, it'll wait another second and so forth. So I'm just going to go back to my browser, hit the back button, which will take me back to the prior page. And now I'm going to run the one that says click again, and then it should go through that loop, wait, and then take me there. This is just going to ensure that the page is there before I start to go after it. Question? Probably not a bad idea to put do events in here. Okay. So now my next step is I've got to find this link and click on it. Okay, so this one, let's go ahead and kind of snoop and take a look at this one. Links rarely have names. They can have names, but they almost never do. So I'm going to inspect this link. And here's what I'm seeing is that here's the link. And it's got an href property. I can see that that's the URL I'm trying to follow. And so we'll notice that the TD tag that's right above it, that's a table data tag. That's the cell that's holding this link in it. It's got a class called middle TD FM CSA. That's another way that I can find an object, is not by its name, but I can find an object by its class. So I'm just going to copy that class name. And find my code. So now I'm going to set elem equal to bot dot find element by class. And then I'm going to put in the class that I'm after. So we'll run that. Again, I can print off that tag name and just make sure that I've got it okay. That's a TD. So now I'm going to go ahead and click. Well, actually, if I click on the TD, nothing happens. I actually have to click on the link. But one of the nice things about the web element is that I can do a search. I can do a search on it as well. So ELEM dot find element. This time I'm going to find element by tag. Find element by tag. And I'm looking for the anchor tag that's in it. So if I go back and look here, we'll see that the cell contains this anchor tag. And so I'm going to, just looking at this cell, this will find the first anchor tag that's in it, and then I'll be able to click on that. And again, I'm going to wait. So I'll copy my little waiting loop. And this time I'm going to wait until the URL says search details in. Okay, so to run this, I'm going to go up to where I'm clicking on the element. And it should find that, click on it, and then wait until the page gets there. So now I've got the page up with the data that I'm after. And we can go after this data in a similar way that we've done here. We can kind of inspect this. This is going to be in a table. We can find tags that are in that particular set. But I'm actually going to show you some tools that I've written for parsing through just raw HTML, which is another set that can be, depending on the way the page is laid out, sometimes it's easier to kind of go after it with the tools that are built into Selenium. Sometimes it's easier to treat that page just as a HTML and then to parse through it. Any questions to this point? Question? Yep, if you right click and say inspect, you should only have to do it, it should only not bring it up on the very first time that it opens the inspector. I mean, when it opens the inspector. If the inspectors are already open and you do it, then it should take you right to it. Okay, so here's where the other, that other .cls file, the parser.cls. So parser.cls is just, well, CLS is actually, it's the definition of an object. So we can create our own objects in VBA. And so this is an object that I created in a project and then just exported the object. So let's see how to import a VBA written object that we can then use instances of. I'm going to go ahead and stop my code here. I'm going to view my project explorer. Okay. So if I was to choose, don't do this, but if I was to choose insert and class module, this is how I could create an object from scratch. That's what we're just about to import. And so I'm going to choose file, import, and then I'm going to find that where I downloaded that parser.cls class. And so that's given me a class module, and the module is named parser. And you can, if you're interested, you can kind of come and look at the HTML that's defined here. Some of this is a little more advanced than we've covered so far, but much of it is stuff that you'll be able to look at and go, oh yeah, I totally see what's going on. But the point is, that's just the definition of an object. So for Selenium Basic wasn't written in VBA. If it was, we'd import it kind of the same way. This parser class is written in VBA. So instead of going and adding a link to the library, we just bring in the source code. But now that I've got that, I should be able to, and I'll just declare it right here. I normally declare things at the top, but I'll declare it right here. I'm going to dim P as a new parser. So P now is an instance of this parser class. It's an object that has properties and methods that are meant to parsing through HTML files a lot easier than having to write it from scratch with VBA. So you remember last time we were together, was it last time, where we actually parsed the text files? So we were kind of writing what it took to be able to go find particular parts of that file. These are tools to kind of make that simpler, specifically written for working with HTML. So the first thing to realize, and it works really similar to like if you're just searching through a text file. So there's going to be a position where your cursor is, and if you do a search, like suppose I was searching this text file here for date add. So if my position is right here and I search for date add, which of these two date adds is it going to find? So if I just were to come in here and say date add. So this searches in a direction from where the cursor is. So the default is to search lower, deeper into the file. And so that's the same idea that I've implemented in this class. And so there is a property you'll always want to manipulate called position. And I'm going to set that to 1, which is the very beginning of the file. And actually, I should probably go ahead and put the text in. I'll do that first. So let me go ahead and put the text into this that we're going to work with. So the text that we're going to be looking at, I want to be everything from the body of this document. So that should be bot.findElement by tag. And the tag that I'm after is the body tag. So the body of the body tag in an HTML document holds everything you see on the page. There's stuff that's not in the body tag, and it's like telling you stuff about the page, but everything you see in the page is in the body tag. And now I want the source of that HTML. And so I'm going to get the attribute called inner HTML. I'm going to go ahead and run this now. And this should get me and open to that location. So the browser's open, we're on the ending page. I should be able to just come up here and look now at my parser. I could look at the text of the parser. And that is all of the HTML in that document. So I've got that now as a text file, or as a block of text that I can then search through. So let me go ahead and take a look at, well, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at what we might want to find. So I'm after this telephone number. So let me inspect this. And I'll undock and inspect again. Okay, so I can see the telephone number here. And so what would really be nice is if I can just find something that occurs in this file just once. And then I can tell the parser, move to that location. And then from there, maybe move to something that doesn't occur just once, but close to it, and get me right to the point where I'm ready to copy out the information that I'm after. So I think this right here, telephone TD, I bet is only going to appear once. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call the move to method of the parser. p.move to, and I'm going to move to where it says telephone, but I'd like it to be a little bit more specific here, how it has telephone and then it has that closing tag after it. So I'll do telephone /TD. It's the closing of the table data tag. Now, if that works, then all it should do is update the position of the parser. So the parser, I set the position of the parser to 1. If I look at p.position, now it's at the 12,831st character. And so it found that 12,000 characters in, and it remembers that's where I am now. It's like I did one search to get me there, and now the next search is going to take me to the next closest place. So now I want to get myself right before where this telephone number is. So I'm going to come to where it says, so essentially, I'm going to think of myself now as being right here, right after that tag. That's where my position has got me. And so I'm going to come down to where it says, I want to find where it says TD width, and I'll take that as my next move. So t.move to. And I'm looking for open bracket TD space width. And I think that is going to be, I think it's going to find it. So let me go ahead and just run that line. Do I have it? Case is going to matter here and everything. I think that looks okay. What's that? No, I don't, because the closing bracket is way over here, and I'm not entirely positive that this 98% is going to be the same each time. I'm pretty comfortable that it's going to say text width, TD TD width. So I want to move to there, kind of like baby steps. Hopefully that finds it. If that worked, it updated the position. Yeah, so it's now a little bit further in. And now from there, I want to move to that closing tag that you were looking for. So I'll just copy this line. I could go to the opening parentheses of the phone number, but what I'm worried about that is that I'm not sure how clean the data are. In other words, the next phone number I'm after might just be ended with dashes and no parentheses. But I'm sure that closing tag is going to be there right before the number starts. And so, that should move me just a few characters forward. Let me go ahead and run that line. And look at my position. Yeah, only advanced me 7 more characters, but now I should be right there. So my next step is going to be to tell it to now to get the text up until the next tag that I'm interested in. And that's going to be up to this non-breaking space. So this ampersand NBSP, that's an HTML thing that says there's a space there. And normally, well, a non-breaking space just says, hey, don't allow this word to break. It's like a space that's not allowed to break on a line. And so I'm going to right now back out to my worksheet, cells, row number, row, column number, let's see, column number we're after is F. The column we're after is F. And yeah, we could go, I think it's number 6. And I'm going to set the value of that equal to, and then p.get text, and I'm going to give then the tag that I want to go to. So what that's going to do is it's going to say, all right, currently where our current position indicator is right here, right between that closing bracket or the closing angle bracket and the opening parenthesis. And I'm asking the get text method to bring me back everything up until where it says NBSP. Now, am I certain that there's going to be an NBSP after every telephone number? Probably the first time through this, not. And so I might pull a few and just check to see if it's there. I'm sure that there's going to be a closing data tag. But if there really is going to be a non-breaking space at the end of this, I just might as well use that. And the truth is, it's going to be there. So that's getting put in because you have 2 things here. You've got the data that someone has entered in, and then you've got the program that's building the HTML around them. And the program is going to build that HTML around it exactly for every record that it goes to. And so you're always trying to say, listen, I want to make sure that what I'm searching for is not part of the data, but it's part of the infrastructure that gets put around that data. So you'll know that it's going to be the same. And that should pull that value back in. Let's see. Yeah, I moved to the closing bracket. Did I move to that one? Did I actually run that part already? Well, here's what I do. I'm going to go back to where it says position equals 1. That's going to take my current position back to the top of the file, and then it will run all of these steps and should put that value into the cell. So let me go ahead and split my screen. And I'll run this, and it's brought that phone number back into F2. So from here, it would just be a matter of saying, now I'm ready to move to the fax. Whatever it is to get to fax, it would probably be just really similar to what I've got here. So I could probably just copy this block, change that to be from telephone to be, in fact, it's worth a try. Let me just go ahead and copy that block. Change this to say fax. And probably has a non-breaking space after it as well. If not, it'll bring in a lot more text than I'm expecting. I'll run that and we'll see if it brings in the fax number. Oops, I wrote it right on top of it. So instead of F, it needs to go into column G. And that's it. That method now will get the phone number and the fax for whichever row I pass in to it. So I have a lot of steps today, have to install software, but this is going to give you some really powerful tools to be able to manipulate a modern browser, just as if there was someone typing stuff in. Question? Oh yeah, so yeah. Can you tell this actually not to update? And the answer is, I'm not sure. So when we're controlling Internet Explorer natively, we can just tell the whole thing to be invisible. I did a quick look to see if there's a way to make Chrome like not be visible, but still be there. And it didn't pop up readily. I'm not sure that there isn't a way, but there wasn't a clear way to do it. So it may be that this is going to be up and visible when it's happening. Yes. So you mean, where did I get it? So the parser is on our, it is on the blog for this class. So I'm going to come back here. So here's the beginning files. You downloaded truck list.xlsx, you downloaded parser, and then it's file import from your VBA editor. File import will bring that parser in. Okay, we're at the end of class. I'll go ahead and get this stuff posted. And this is the kind of stuff that takes a lot of practice kind of working through these tools to really get good at it. The project that I'm getting you ready for here is on the kind of the light side of it. So it won't be a tremendous amount of work to get that project done. All right, thanks for coming. Class dismissed.